Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Benaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. I'm delighted to introduce you today to our latest guest, Paul Gunn, who has built a career around procurement, logistics, and supply chain. His impressive track record in this domain is evidenced by the firms he has owned and their flawless delivery performance records. In fact, most of the companies he has run have won multiple awards, including being on the list of the fastest growing privately owned firms as part of Inc. And Paul holds a Bachelor in Arts of Sociology from Georgia State University and a Master of Science in Business Administration from the University of Phoenix. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome.
Okay, thank you.
So, Paul, tell us about your journey and how it actually felt to make it on the fastest growing list of companies when it actually happened, not just once, but multiple times in your case. Did that bring you a lot of joy?
It did. That's a great question. I felt well being able to have an internal validation. And I hear often lately about healing your inner child and the therapists that talk about things you may carry that sat or just carried into adulthood, and to be able to see something come to fruition that as a child you were told maybe those things weren't going to happen, you weren't going to amount to much, and then to be able to take that idea, make that list, and do well was meaningful to me. To cement there's a process, there's something that was thought and we put in action to attain it. And it felt good now knowing, hey, if I've made this list, maybe down the road, I'm going to be able to help somebody tell that story that may help them reach and pivot there. So it did. It felt good to be able to be part of something. And Inc. does a very good job of being inclusive of entrepreneurs and highlighting those stories from failures, what worked, what didn't work, what is working to help others. It was warming all around.
Beautiful. And tell us about what actually brings you joy outside of your professional pursuits and how you bring joy to others.
So this is part of it, like how we're having this exchange, how we met, the curiosity that stems. And I would say that was part of a joy, because when I made that list, it's like you don't want to say, for lack of a better word, it's more of a light may be shown, and then people may take interest. So now what happens? You have people reaching out, and then it furthers the ability to cement and open a line of communication to talk. I don't think that's how we met per se because it ain't, but just how our natural curiosity comes and say, hey, we're now here talking, having this. I get to learn what you do. And then there's an exchange. And now you have a continuum that goes on from people sharing their stories. And you get into learning people. There's a lot of similarities, either directly or a few degrees down, that you share stories that help build bonds and may further along in that process. And it lets you link and realize maybe some of the things going through in the current situation, one, are not as bad, or two, you come across someone who's able to help aid in what you are going through. So being able to connect and learn of others brings me immense joy to realize what we're doing is beyond just making a dollar.
I love it. And I think the aspect that you just covered about helping others, it's also a way for us to feel joy in our lives. And if we go back to your professional journey and the companies that you've led and grown with such success, can you tell us who have been some mentors or people that have helped you tremendously to accelerate the growth of your past businesses?
So I would say I am blessed beyond measure for two parents that vested so much. And my dad, not to just tune, so he's a teacher by trade, but he could have done so much more. When he had us, he was so focused on making sure he was a hands-on dad, and that he was going to instill in us, for what I often say, the eternal wealth. He always felt, look, you can get stuff on this earth, that's fine, but what are you going to leave for people? How are you going to put deposits into people beyond that? And he was just really focused on, I need to raise my sons so they can leave an impact in this world. And that was what was a big marker on me. And as those teachings and those thoughts where we grew up, when you came to run into people, it was evident either they were in line with that or they weren't. So as you came across, the experiences themselves were able to go back, and I was able to lean on my father. So external from him, there was a pivotal point in my 20s, albeit I was actually in Canada, in Montreal, where that was around someone who had excessive success, and they cemented the very things that my father had taught all that time. If you don't have character, if you're not doing things for other people, none of this stuff matters. Yes, you will attain success, you can, but the greatest success comes from being able to position helping others and being around that person, validating the things my dad taught at that time, and my mom as well, left a lasting impact. I had an epiphany at that time. As they say, everyone has the same 24 hours.
I love it. So, given the influence that your parents have had on you, I know now
Yeah.
you're a parent of a beautiful young boy who's 7 years old. Tell
Yeah.
us more about the impact and the inspiration that you hope to bring on him when it comes to living a joyful life.
It's very meaningful, and to be able to take those lessons learned, that's why to see it and have it not just taught, but live it and have the success in terms of a material way of others viewing it that way. Now I'm able to go. And when I hear him mention, well, Dad, money's not necessarily for me, it's to help others, or to see that when he gets money, how he says, okay, well, Dad, I want to donate this to someone else who's in need, and to understand, okay, now, yes, things may change. Yes, he may go and have the natural tendency to pull, but the foundation was something that was taught to us to be able to pass and reinstill into him. Yes, what you do that goes beyond money is more important. To see him find joy in the simple things in life. I pray and I hope that as he goes through life, he anchors and focuses on those simple things that will remind him through the ups and downs, which are going to happen, that's important.
Yes, and the ups and downs of life, I mean, are a natural reality that
Yeah.
we all have to accept. And when you actually look at your life, and, we all have lows and periods that have been challenging, but often in the research that I've done, many actually say that it's because we felt bad or we've had those negative emotions at one point in our lives that we can actually even feel more joy. Tell us about maybe whether you believe that is the case for you as a result of some of the experiences that you've had until now.
So I would say, yes, this is meaningful, and I do believe it, as all the major difficult turning points in my life were very tough to get through. And I always laugh in memorable ways, saying I've always gone up the rough side of the mountain. I don't know what the smooth side of the mountain looks like, or if there's such a thing, but the painstaking parts of my life have given me joy to appreciate. Either my life could have been taken from me, or the stuff I've gone through was really heavy, that I'm simply glad to be living another day. And when I go through difficult things, I do reference or reflect back on just how bad it could have been. And there's been multiple times that my life could have been taken from me. So when I look and see, well, I'm here, I've got a family, I've got a son, I've had the ability to talk to people. We've endured the pandemic. I could have had my brother almost lost twice to that, and he's still around. So I look at those things and say, I'm grateful for that. Yes, I do get frustrated. It's natural for me to get upset at things. But when I sit back and look, how bad is it really when others are going through so much more? But had I not gone through those, I think I would have had maybe a different opinion.
And after having all these incredible experiences, particularly when you're referring to almost losing your life, how does purpose come into your world after you realize that we're not immortal, that life could end at any moment? What has been the turning point in terms of how you look at life from a purpose perspective as a result of those experiences?
That's a great question. I've taught growing up with Christian belief in Christ that you're here for a purpose and a greater one for an eternal good. But I felt like for me, it mattered, but it was until I went through those and almost had, through car accidents, my life saved. in places I shouldn't have walked away from due to those car accidents, that I realized, okay, I need to really focus even more. Time is limited. What am I going to do to either help somebody else? How can I be thankful for the fact my life is saved? Because that car accident that really changed me happened at 26. And it shook me to say, what was I doing? What was going on? Am I using my full potential to reach others and show, hey, look, it's more to life than just trying to search for material wealth. And that purpose has driven everything since then. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to fight for everything I have and give it all, knowing that at any moment I can have my life taken. And now that our son's here, is trying to just live a life knowing, hey, I'm not going to live forever. And what can I get into him so he can see that when dad closes his eyes, this is a life either he wants to continue on or fully anchor in as well.
How beautiful. And what advice would you have for other entrepreneurs that may be struggling to either grow their business or have other types of challenges? What would you say to them in order to be able to find more joy in their life?
That's a great question because sometimes you go through the weeks and days. It is ups and downs. It's a constant battle. You got to fight for market share. You got to fight for new vendors. You got to fight for new people coming in the market, old ones who don't want you there. And I find with me, when I look to cross domains and see what other people are doing in their industry, what are they learning, what's the pains that they're going through, and where and how they find joy. That's why I love how you position that. When I see where they find joy from some of their own ups and downs, it then takes me back to say, okay, how do I bring that in here and reference what I'm going through in terms of recommending how they're fighting in their own position. Now, access to capital is a critical need. And the reason why I say, if you can bring back to where you find joy, finding those relationships and connecting in that process, it's going to be a long-term process in terms of how you build that connection, but approaching it from what you're grateful for and how you're looking to help somebody else may find those financial partners who are looking to align with you because you're content kind of where you are, but you recognize where your purpose is and how to get there. So you're going to be mindful of who that financial partner is. So to answer your question, in short, it would be find a financial partner who's invested well in your purpose and willing to endure those low points, because it looks evident we're either in a recession now or heading towards one. Who's going to be around to understand and sit with you as you go through a tough time to realize your purpose is bigger than just what this short time we're going through?
Yes, so beautiful. So to look back on your life,
Uh-huh.
would there be one thing that you may wish to change? And if that's the case, what would it be?
Oh, I think about this all the time, and I try to not let it steal my joy. If I had to do it all over again, I would not have gone to college. I feel the lessons learned in my later 20s that led me realize up to that point of when I had the car accident that really changed everything. I would have started businesses earlier, meaning at 18, 19, I would have went and worked for an HVC client. I would have went and worked for something that would have helped me build a trade and learned those lessons through trying to own a business at a younger age, and learned and perfected the selling process, perfected how to build connections, and then let those one or two businesses be the foundational block for building something bigger, instead of trying to do what I felt at that time was I need to go to college, I need to get a degree, get a job, and then map out. I was mapping out my time. Oh, well, maybe in my 40s, I could start my business after working and saving up the money. I would have just taken the risk sooner. And I felt that process hindered my joy because I was unhappy in school. I was unhappy. I mean, like, most of the times I was sitting asking myself, what does this have to do? What is this going to aid? How is it going to get me into running a business sooner? And for a long time, I carried that. And then it wasn't until that accident that I realized, stop trying to get there in that time. Do it now because it could be taken out anytime. So I would tell my younger self, forgo school at that time if I needed to, and I needed to get the education, go through a certification type of process.
And is that the advice you'd actually give your son when he's going to be much older?
Oh, no, I tell him that right now, son. You don't have to go to college. If you do, find it. Take your time. You want to get educated. Now, I'm not against education. Yes, I don't want to go see a doctor who hasn't gone through the proper change, or I don't want someone building things that doesn't necessarily have the licenses and the proper training to do it. But in terms of what's necessary, I'm letting know you have options. Find your joy. Find who you are, and then do what makes you happy, but still being logical about how it's going to be providing for you. But don't necessarily feel you have to rush to go to school. And I've seen people who've done that. I've tried to show them the math. Hey, if you come right out at 16, 17 and you work and you save this amount of money, you can maybe start it at 24, 25, and you'll be off to a better start than necessarily going to school. That's just what I'm recommending. Whatever he chooses, I'm going to support, but definitely showing him there are other options if he knows how to manage his money right.
I'm curious to know as to whether you saw the entrepreneur in you at a very young age, and your son being 7 years old today. How early did you know that you wanted to become an entrepreneur? Because some people, as I said, try to go the traditional path that maybe has been influenced by culture, by family, by their communities, and only realize later that they're willing and open to take certain risks, because entrepreneurship comes with certain risks, and some people may be more open to heading on that path and others may not necessarily be. I'm just curious, when did you actually discover that spark of entrepreneurship within you? Were you super young, or did it really come more as you became a young adult?
It was young, so around 8 or 9 is when I really started to see. When my dad was often around, and I would quickly see when we would go places, he was there. He was at the games. He was at the church. He was always around at those times to get us from school. So it's like, well, there has to be something different. And it was around 10, he started to let me come into his small business. He was in accounting, helping other small businesses. And that's when I saw, and the biggest thing I took away from him, even watching him, was one the time, but it was what people said, how they found joy and how he interacted with them. It was the character left. And from there, he was like, look, if you want to learn about it, he never really specifically told us. He's like, go read about it, go find it. So at that time, at the newsstands before the internet, we would go into the gas stations and I would pick up the entrepreneur magazines and the Inc. magazines, and I would read them, and I would just look through reading all the different stories, wondering, well, what was the secret? What were they doing? And it sparked. And then I'll admit, my fears at that age were, I don't know, how does somebody go from a one person kind of business to grow those things larger? So that fear limited me in terms of saying I didn't capitalize and find my own inner peace to just go ahead and take that risk. So I was like, fine, I'll just go to school and do the long way and gain insight, thinking that that was the process. But I was always curious. Always those magazines I looked in and saw. And I think it was the Mark Cuban issue when I was young, where Mark Cuban got on the Inc. and he was talking about how he built his businesses up that sparked it. So that's always stuck with me when seeing when he got his.
Fantastic. And so at the source, there's
Yeah.
curiosity, as you
Yeah.
said, curiosity about adventure linked to entrepreneurship, curiosity about human beings, curiosity about life, and embracing that as a core mindset to live with joy. Would you say that that summarizes well what you've just shared with us?
Yes, it did. It did. Because to be able to have a path where your curiosity can fuel it, that was the hindrance I learned when I did work the different jobs through school. It's almost like it stifled your curiosity. If you bring new ideas, they're kind of, well, that doesn't fit in the policy. It doesn't fit in our path. It doesn't fit. And that almost killed my soul. Said, why is this curiosity not being able to be expanded upon? Or why does it have to be fit in a box? Now, I understand, yes, it's policy. Yes, you have to do things. But the more I would sit through that in school and see the lessons and the different studies and going through college, I just realized that wasn't going to be something for me. So I kind of let that fear get too much of me up until there. And as I said, that accident was a pivotal moment to say, don't let that fear hit you anymore. Go ahead and just do it, because that's not a life you're going to want. At least take the risk and go all in. And at that point, I fully let loose
Wonderful. And taking that risk and having no regrets, actually. And there's
Yeah.
research that just came out recently about this that analyzed the regrets of individuals. And what it actually indicated, and this is research by Daniel Pink, they highlighted actually how often, despite the fears or despite the uncertainty about doing certain things, we would live with more regrets if we would not have taken those actions. And if we take those actions and we fail, at the end, people actually are more joyful and happier just because they actually tested things out and actually had the courage to move forward and the curiosity to explore new avenues that they never actually dreamed of, rather than basically coming at the end of your life and saying, oh, I wish I would have done this, and never actually knowing as to what could have been the new possibilities that would emerge in your life as a result of taking those courageous actions.
Oh, I would agree with that. I feel like after doing that, especially that accident and going through all of that, like I've lived free and lived with no regrets. But this is one I'm trying to make sure, hey, look, when I close my eyes, if I could erase that stain of saying, I wish I would have started it at 18, this is one that sits there that I'm going to have to say, fine, maybe it was enough. So it's the only one, but this is certainly one regret. I say, if I could do it all over again, boy, would I wish to have that one. But maybe that would have made a path for other regrets that would have been even more. So I'm thankful, I'm joyful that I can look now and say, well, that's the one that just bothers me, instead of saying, well, it's 10. But in the optimistic side of saying, if I could erase one, this would be it.
But now, as we talked about the past, let's now talk about the future. So,
Yeah.
what would be one action that you would love to take moving forward and make sure you can actually say, yes, I lived with joy and I have zero regrets from this point forward, if you wish, in the future? What are some key projects, key initiatives that you really would love to pursue to bring more joy to your life and to bring more joy to this world?
So something I'm actively working on and finding joy is to be more invested in learning social causes and how to operate. My curiosity sparked in that during the pandemic, seeing places that needed stuff, and I had to learn. Yes, there's fraud in that. That's a whole new industry. There's a whole new domain of the way things work. And see, okay, there's top line, then there's ones that really get at the root of the issue. And my curiosity and learning curve, that's something I really hope as I grow and as I finish out my career, I become more invested in really understanding. So how we bring in resources, but then how we turn around and then place it in people who have that real need and find joy saying, hey, look, this thing's working all around, because you can leverage the quote unquote material success of a company, I mean, and then put it into places where kids don't have food, they don't have water, or you have women empowerment. You're being a light in the places that just help others reach their own goals. So to do that and find joy, that's where I eventually want to see myself fully anchored and fully vested, and being able to say, I'm not going to take any regrets, even if I got to learn some difficult lessons, and I've learned a few already, trying to understand how that works in that domain. But that's where I would want to be. And so I'm not going to take any regrets going forward with that.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Paul. Any final words that you'd like to share about how we could more collectively bring joy to this world? Any specific actions that you'd recommend we take as communities, as leaders, as parents, to bring a more joyful reality to all of us?
That's a great question. And collectively, I think that's probably a very good place to start. Internally, each person. It's potent when you run into people who live that. Yes, not everybody's going to have a kumbaya moment and want to say, hey, how do I fix and help others? But the more people root that internally or ask that question and then live to extend with no regrets to do so, you may start a continuum and a wide circumference for those who are going to tag other people and build that community. It may be a slow process, but one person does have the ability to touch another, that has to touch, and so on and so on. It's not going to get everybody, but those who do have a potent impact, especially when it goes up the chain into those who have resources to leverage it and spread it faster.
I love it. Thank you so much, Paul. It's
Yeah.
been an immense pleasure to have you with us today and to share your wisdoms and your experience, and look forward to staying in touch.
Same here.